Hey guys, tonight we drift away, far away, across the vast Pacific under skies littered with stars. There's no traffic noise here, no buzz of phones or hum of modern life. Just the slow slap of water against a canoe carved by hand and lashed together with braided fiber. The moon hangs low and pale above you, casting a silver sheen across the waves. A faint scent rides the breeze. Briny, yes, but also something green, something unfamiliar. You lift your head. You're not alone. In front of you stands a figure with a face carved by the sea and wind, eyes fixed on the stars. They don't speak because they don't have to. Every breath, every twitch of their fingers as they test the air tells you they know where you're going, even if you don't. Welcome to the open ocean, where your map is the sky, your compass is your bones, and your destination, well, somewhere out there. You probably won't survive this. Let's be honest. Your modern brain would short-circuit without Google Maps or a waterproof power bank. But somehow, for thousands of years, Polynesian navigators did this without any of it, and they made it look relaxing. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and the local time. Let's see who's floating along with us tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel the canoe shift slightly under your weight as the wind changes, subtle but certain. There's a rhythm here, a pulse beneath the waves, like a heartbeat you're just beginning to hear. The navigator places a hand on the outrigger and murmurs something, almost to themselves. You don't understand the language, but it sounds like a lullaby and a warning wrapped into one. The ocean is not empty. It's never been empty. It's a vast library of information, if you know how to read it. You don't have a compass, not because you lost it, but because it hasn't been invented yet. You don't have paper maps, telescopes, or waterproof charts. What you have are the stars above you, scattered like breadcrumbs across a velvet sky, and the rising moon, telling you when the tides will shift. You have wave patterns slapping the hull from the northeast. You have the smell of salt and driftwood and something else, jasmine maybe, or ripe guava, carried on the wind from an island still hours away. The Polynesians didn't conquer the Pacific by accident. They weren't blown off course. They sailed intentionally, purposefully, like people who knew exactly where they were going, even if nobody today can fully agree on how they did it. Historians still argue whether Polynesian expansion was deliberate or accidental. But if you could see the way the navigator on this canoe moves, his fingers grazing the sea to feel the swell's direction, his eyes fixed on stars you can barely name, you'd know this isn't guesswork, it's choreography, a dance passed down across millennia. Out here, time gets stretchy. It bends and folds like soft linen in the wind. You don't measure it in minutes or hours, but in stars rising and falling. In the way the wind presses against your cheek, or how the water changes color at dawn. You watch as the sun melts down the horizon, and the navigator turns, his face glowing briefly in the amber light. He taps the side of the canoe once, rhythmically, a signal. You don't know what it means, but the crew does. Someone shifts a sail. Someone else reaches into a bundle of dried pandanus leaves to chew thoughtfully. Not a word is spoken. You lie back, letting your fingers trail into the sea. Warm, gentle. Every now and then, the canoe creaks like it's whispering secrets. You imagine the people who once sat exactly where you are centuries ago, crossing thousands of miles of blue without a single landmark in sight. The Pacific Ocean covers nearly 1/3 of the Earth's surface. That's a lot of water. And yet, the Polynesians managed to connect hundreds of islands, scattered like freckles across that endless blue. From Hawaii to Rapa Nui to Aotearoa, each landfall was the result of an intentional voyage. Mainstream historians often point to the Lapita culture as the ancestors of Polynesians, tracing their movement through pottery shards like breadcrumbs. But pottery doesn't float. People do. People who built double-hulled canoes, often over 60 feet long, using nothing more than stone tools, rope made from coconut husk, and a deep understanding of the natural world. A canoe isn't just transportation, it's survival. You sleep on it, eat on it, navigate on it, and every inch of it tells a story. That braided lash? It's a reminder of a storm survived. That gouge in the hull? Maybe a reef scraped years ago, now smoothed by time and salt. There's a legend you hear from the old navigator when he finally speaks, just once. His voice is rough, like coral dragged across wood. He tells you of an island where the land smells like roasted breadfruit long before you see it. He talks of ancestors who knew which direction to sail by how the sun glittered on the backs of fish at noon. He mentions a great voyage where a canoe chased a cloud for 3 days because the birds kept flying toward it, and they were never wrong. You want to ask him how he knows, but you don't, because something tells you the answer would take days, and you'd have to earn it. The breeze shifts again. This time it carries something unmistakable: earth. Not the generic earthy smell of a potted plant, but something deeper, richer, like damp soil, like life. It's the breath of land rising off the sea. You sit up, blinking against the dusk. You still can't see anything. No trees, no cliffs, no shimmering lights. But the smell is there, faint but growing. You're not imagining it. Turns out, humans really can smell land from miles away, especially when it's been raining. Wet vegetation, volcanic soil, even bat droppings waft out over the water. The olfactory clues, if you're trained to notice them, are as good as GPS. It wasn't just about sight or sound. Wayfinders used scent, too. Some slept with their noses toward the wind. Others could tell when a canoe entered a land wind, air that had touched trees and hills before reaching the sea. It's not magic, it's mastery. Of course, most of us today can barely smell dinner burning in the other room, let alone identify a tree-covered island by scent alone. But that's modern life for you. One clogged nostril away from extinction. You think of how many things we've traded for convenience. GPS for instinct, Wi-Fi for silence, climate control for the art of reading wind. But out here, none of those work. There's no cell signal in the open Pacific, no Starbucks. Just you, a canoe, the stars, and a breeze carrying a whisper of distant land. As the stars tilt overhead and the canoe rocks you like a cradle, you feel the edges of your awareness soften. You've begun to let go of the shore, of schedules, of the need to know what happens next. There's only the now, the smell of land, the hush of water, the hush of history lapping gently at the sides of your mind, asking you to float a little longer. The canoe glides on, steady and silent, like it knows where it's going even if you don't. The night deepens into a kind of velvet darkness, not scary, just complete. You lie there under the stars, wrapped in the soft sounds of ocean hush and the occasional creak of the hull. And then, something strange. The canoe feels warmer beneath you, the air thicker, charged. You blink, and the darkness begins to flicker, reds and oranges glowing faintly on the horizon. You're not dreaming, you're witnessing birth. Land, fresh and furious, is pushing itself out of the ocean, smoking and steaming and stubborn. Lava spills like slow honey, hissing as it meets the sea. This is how islands are born out here, not in tidy time-lapse videos, but in fire, fury, and patience. You're hovering at the edge of creation. The Polynesian islands were forged in fire, each one a child of underwater volcanoes that clawed their way to the surface over millions of years. You float past the echoes of this process, the jagged silhouettes of island chains like the Marquesas, Tuamotu, and the massive shield of Hawaii. Some of these islands are still young and full of geologic attitude. Others are old, weary, worn down to atolls, just rings of coral barely skimming the ocean's surface like a celestial donut. You begin to realize something about this world. It's alive. Not metaphorically, actually alive. It breathes through trade winds, shifts with tectonic moods, and mutters warnings through waves if you're quiet enough to listen. The ancient Polynesians knew this, of course. They didn't think of the ocean as a void to be conquered. It was a pathway, a womb, a force to respect. Historians agree the first settlers of these islands came from the west, from places like Taiwan and the Philippines, part of the Great Austronesian Migration that began around 3000 BCE. These people weren't just drifting aimlessly, they were intentional explorers. Over centuries, their descendants hopped from island to island, moving eastward like cautious chess players testing the board. Each new land was another proof of skill, patience, and persistence. You hear the soft clang of a shell bell tied to the side of the canoe, announcing a change in wind. The navigator stirs slightly, then settles again. A few of the crew begin to chant softly, not for show, but for memory. These chants aren't just songs, they're encyclopedias. Star paths, wind patterns, historical landfalls, all woven into verses that are sung, not written. Because paper doesn't last in salt air, but melodies do. One chant in particular lingers in your ear, even though you don't know the words. It feels old. It smells old, if that makes any sense, like carved wood and sea foam and burnt taro leaves. The rhythm tells you where the wind is going. The pauses hint at when to turn the sail. It's not just art, it's a user manual passed down orally for 1,000 years. You hum along, pretending you understand, and no one calls you out. As new islands formed and cooled, early settlers brought their world with them. Taro, coconuts, sugarcane, dogs, chickens, and people. Always people. They didn't just arrive and settle. They shaped the land, cut terraces into volcanic slopes, built fish ponds, and planted breadfruit groves. These weren't primitive castaways, they were planners, gardeners, engineers. Quirky side note, on some islands they even brought rats. Unintentionally, sure, but those little furballs hitched rides on canoes like freeloading pirates. Turns out, today's archaeologists use ancient rat droppings to figure out when humans first arrived on an island. Yes, history's written in poop. You're welcome. You start to notice something about the way the navigator gazes at the sky. He isn't looking, he's remembering. Every star above you has a name. Every constellation has a role. There's a reason the canoe sets sail at night. Because out here, darkness isn't an obstacle, it's a map. That volcanic warmth still clings to the air, but the breeze has cooled just slightly, brushing your cheek like a damp feather. You sit up and squint toward the east. There, in the faint glow before sunrise, lies the dark silhouette of an island, your first landfall. It's not big, a few villas, some trees, the promise of coconuts and dry feet. Imagine the first humans who landed there. No satellite imaging, no Google Earth, just intuition, chant, and courage. They would have stepped off the canoe and kissed the ground, then gotten to work. Fresh water first, then shelter, then fire. The order never changes. One of the crew tosses a carved stick overboard, watching how it floats. It spins, drifts, then steadies. A message. The currents are right. You'll make landfall by mid-morning. Historians still argue whether Polynesians reached South America before Europeans arrived. The navigator mutters suddenly. It catches you off guard. His voice has that sandpaper smooth depth, like someone who's swallowed too much sun and salt. He shrugs. But we've always known. The wind tells us. It's true. Some evidence suggests contact between Polynesians and South Americans long before Columbus had a compass. Sweet potatoes, native to South America, showed up in Polynesia way before they should have, unless, of course, someone brought them back, with a smile, on a canoe. You think about that, about the boldness it would take to sail 1,000 miles across open ocean just to see if something's there. It's not just bravery, it's curiosity on steroids. A warm rain begins to fall, not sharp, but fat and slow, the kind that smells like soil and soap. It patters softly against the canoe, beads of water racing down the wooden hull. You close your eyes and breathe in. There it is again, the scent of land. Stronger now, tangier, like crushed leaves, blooming flowers, wet bark. You don't even need to see the island anymore. You can smell its welcome. The crew grows quiet. No one chants, no one adjusts the sail. It's a reverent silence, like they're listening to something too sacred to interrupt. The rain fades. Dawn stretches out, golden and low, washing everything in syrupy light. The silhouette of the island is clearer now. Trees dancing on the breeze, white sand fringing the shore like icing. As you draw closer, you notice the navigator do something strange. He reaches into a small woven pouch and pulls out a handful of sand. Grayish, fine, volcanic. He sniffs it, then throws it into the wind. A ritual? Maybe. A test? Could be. Either way, the sand vanishes, carried toward the island like a message. He glances at you and finally smiles. "You'll know you've arrived," he says softly, "when the wind smells like memory." You lean over the side of the canoe, staring down into the water. Schools of fish dart beneath you, weaving among coral heads shaped like sleeping giants. The sea here is shallower, calmer. Even the light feels different, thicker, more forgiving. You realize you're not just approaching an island, you're rejoining it. You've arrived not by chance, but by design. Not because a map said so, but because the world whispered in your ear, and you listened. The canoe coasts through the shallows now, gliding over a sea so clear it might as well be glass. You can see the bottom. Coral gardens, sea cucumbers loafing around like lazy slugs, even the occasional glint of fish scales flashing like coins in a wishing fountain. The paddles barely touch the water, but the canoe moves with purpose, like it's pulled by invisible strings. There's a hush to this moment. Not silence exactly, but a kind of respectful quiet. You feel it in your chest, a stillness that tells you this is sacred ground. First landfall. After hundreds, maybe thousands of miles of nothing but ocean, here is a patch of earth that actually holds still. It doesn't swell or rock beneath you. It's solid, and that feels almost absurd. Your bare feet hit sand that's still damp from the morning tide. It's warm, soft, and oddly grainy, like powdered shell. You step forward gingerly. Not because you're afraid, though, let's face it, you are, but because you don't want to disrespect the moment. Every footprint you leave marks a new beginning. The navigator doesn't say much. He steps ashore and immediately kneels, presses his palm into the earth, then touches that same hand to his forehead. A greeting, maybe even an apology, for intruding, for surviving, for arriving at all. You follow suit. Your fingers meet the damp sand, and for a second you feel connected to something bigger than your own weary body. This island has been waiting a long time, not just for you, but for someone. A sailor, a farmer, a family, a future. Historians have traced similar moments through oral tradition. They weren't just landings, they were ceremonies. Naming the place, thanking it, claiming it, not with flags, but with respect. Many of the islands we know today, Samoa, Tonga, Tahiti, were settled this way. Each one a fresh canvas, shaped by hands that understood they weren't conquering the land, they were joining it. You wander inland, feet crunching over fallen leaves and coconut husks. The trees tower above you, palm, breadfruit, banana, arching together like old cathedral ceilings. Light filters through in broken rays, gilding everything in sleepy gold. Even the air tastes green. You pause beside a patch of taro plants, their heart-shaped leaves slick with dew. Everything is so alive, it feels like the whole island is breathing. It didn't get this way on its own. These forests are curated. The early settlers planted what they needed, cultivated what would thrive. A single canoe might carry cuttings wrapped in banana bark, seedlings tucked beside gourds of fresh water, a garden in transit. This island didn't become habitable by accident. It was built, planted, nurtured, coaxed. And here's the quirky part. They brought pigs. Full-size, squealing, occasionally grumpy pigs. Imagine trying to keep a pig calm on a canoe in rough seas for weeks. Now imagine trying it without losing your mind. But they did it, because pork was vital to ritual feasts, social exchanges, and, well, breakfast. You find a carved rock near a stream, partly buried, mostly moss-covered. A face is etched into it, wide eyes and a curious smirk. It's old, really old. Maybe a tiki, maybe just someone's idea of humor from a few hundred years ago. Either way, it stares back at you like it knows all your secrets. Historians still argue whether these carvings were spiritual symbols or early forms of political graffiti. Some say they honored deities, others claim they marked sacred spots or warned of danger. Maybe it was all of the above. Or maybe, like every generation, someone just wanted to leave their mark and didn't have Instagram. Back at the shore, the navigator is already organizing supplies, unloading gourds, stacking bundles of dried leaves, setting up a makeshift shelter with coconut fronds. There's no delay, no dramatic exhale. They landed, they prayed, now it's time to get to work. You pitch in, clumsily. He hands you a sharpened stick and points toward a cluster of yams that need digging. It's sweaty, awkward labor, but there's something grounding about it. No meetings, no emails, just root vegetables and sore muscles. That night, you sit beside a small fire, watching the flames flicker like blinking stars. The navigator sits opposite you, humming again. Different tune this time. Slower, almost mournful. He reaches into a bundle of bark cloth and pulls out something unexpected. A carved stick, notched with tiny cuts along its length. "Story stick," he says, handing it to you. Each notch is a voyage, or a memory, or a storm. You run your fingers over it. The grooves are shallow, but deep enough to last. It's a kind of journal. Tactile, portable, waterproof. No passwords required. You lie down on a mat woven from pandanus leaves. It's not exactly soft, but it's dry and smells faintly of the sea. Your bones ache in the good way, like they've earned their rest. The fire crackles. The wind rustles the trees just enough to sing you to sleep. That night, you dream, not of the ocean, but of stars tumbling down like rain, of sails blooming like flowers, of footprints in sand slowly fading with the tide. And in the dream, someone's whispering your name, not because you're lost, but because you've been found. You wake before dawn, not because you planned to, but because the island itself wakes you. Birdsong rolling in like a wave, soft wind prying open your eyelids. The kind of wake-up call that doesn't scream. It just exists, persistent, polite, unavoidable. You stretch on the woven mat, your back crackling like a bag of popcorn. The navigator is already up, of course. He's squatting beside the fire pit, carefully feeding it scraps of coconut husk and dry driftwood. He glances at you, then tosses you a grin that says, "Tired? Good. That means you're learning something." Today is not for resting. Today is for remembering. The navigator tells you you'll need to hike to the island's highest point. No explanation, just a gesture up, toward the volcanic ridge that cuts across the interior like a dinosaur's spine. You groan, but there's no sympathy coming, just that grin again. So you follow, barefoot, because why not lean into the hardship a little? The trail is narrow, but well-trod. Roots twist like stubborn veins across your path. Mosquitoes buzz like tiny doubters. And somewhere above you, a bird lets out a laugh that feels just a little too personal. As you climb, the trees begin to thin. Ferns give way to low shrubs, and suddenly you're in open air. The wind up here is stronger, edged with salt. It slaps you awake in the most annoying, glorious way. You reach the top just as the sun cracks the horizon, and wow, this is the view they wrote the songs about. Ocean in every direction, the horizon curved like the rim of a colossal bowl. Islands dot the sea like freckles on the water's face. And here's where it gets weird. The navigator doesn't just stand and admire the view. He squats, sniffs, listens. You follow suit, but all you smell is sweat and soil. The breeze changes, and he mutters, "Canoe wind." He closes his eyes. And a reef, 7 days west. You blink. How do you smell a reef? He shrugs. Same way you smell your neighbor's barbecue 3 blocks away. And suddenly, you get it. The nose knows. Polynesian navigators didn't just look at stars or watch birds. They used smell, actual literal scent. They could catch the faint fragrance of land carried on the wind, flowers, trees, the damp aroma of soil after rain. Even guano. Yes, bird poop, specifically seabird colonies that stink in a very specific way. Congratulations, you're officially navigating with your nostrils now. Historians still argue whether this smelling land was a poetic metaphor or a legitimate technique. But time and time again, oral histories say the same thing. The scent of land arrives before you see it. Navigators trained their senses to pick up the faintest floral trace, the musky green breath of jungle long before it appeared on the horizon. And it wasn't just about flowers. Salt carried differently over shallow reefs. Freshwater lakes created their own thermal signatures. Even insects, yes, insects, gave clues. Some buzzed in higher frequencies when land was near, their bodies reacting to humidity shifts you couldn't even feel. The fringe fact? Some ancient navigators used their tongues. That's right, they'd taste droplets of sea spray. Salty, yes, but with slight differences depending on where currents flowed or how close land might be. Just imagine licking the air and guessing if you're close to Fiji. Your brain starts cataloging every scent. Banana, seaweed, something like overripe guava, and sunscreen. Wait, that might be you. The navigator chuckles. Still too loud in your head, he says. You'll smell it when you shut up in here. He taps your forehead. And then he gestures to the horizon. You squint, you stare, nothing. But then, maybe? A smudge? No, just cloud. Or, no, yes, there, just for a second, a flicker, a shimmer of dark against the light. Not solid, just a whisper of something that isn't water or sky. Land? You want to shout, but the navigator puts a hand on your shoulder, grounding you. Wait, he says. So you do. And sure enough, the scent changes. Softer now, sweeter, like flowers you can't quite name. It's not sharp, not strong, but it's there. Your breath catches. You've done it. You've smelled land. The sun climbs higher, throwing molten light across the sea. The navigator nods and turns to head back down the ridge. You follow, legs shaky, lungs full of invisible knowledge. On the way down, he starts humming again, another chant. This one faster, urgent, a rhythm for rowing, for returning. Back at camp, he draws in the sand with a stick, a crude map of currents and stars. Then he adds something new, a swirl, a mark for wind. And beside it, a tiny flower. You learn the stars, he says. You learn the sea. But until you can smell the land, you're just visiting. He presses a half-rotted fruit into your hand. It stinks, like gym socks and disappointment. This, he says, is what the island smells like in full sun. Learn it. You gag but nod, because you're committed now, deep in. There's a reason these navigators could find land hundreds of miles away. They weren't relying on luck. They were paying attention. To stars, yes. To birds, waves, clouds, but also to their noses, to scent trails and air pressure, to how your skin feels when land is close. And it wasn't magic, it was memory. When modern sailors mapped Polynesia, they were baffled by how accurately the ancient voyagers had plotted their courses, without charts, without compasses. Some suspected divine intervention, others accused luck. But the truth was simpler. Deep, practiced observation, a total sensory relationship with the ocean. You lean back, staring at the clouds. letting your senses stretch. You think you smell something. Might just be coconuts. But then again, maybe it's the next island calling. The scent still lingers in your nostrils by the next morning. Not the fruit. Thankfully, that's long gone, buried somewhere the ants can deal with it. But the memory of land. The faintest, warmest whisper of green on the wind, like nature's perfume. You keep sniffing the air every few minutes, like you're trying to crack a code only your nose can read. But the navigator has other plans for you today. He taps your shoulder, points to the canoe, and makes a spiraling motion with his finger. Translation: we're heading out again. Because land is nice, but learning doesn't happen while you're comfortable. Back to the sea you go. So you pack the canoe. You're better at it now. The ropes make more sense, the bundles of food sit better in the hull, and you only smack your shin on the outrigger once, which feels like an Olympic-level win. The navigator eyes the sky, the waves, the color of the water. He nods once, and with a grunt, pushes the canoe back into the blue. And you're off. The rhythm returns. Paddle, glide, paddle, glide. But this time, the navigator wants to teach you about swells. Now, if you're imagining breaking waves and dramatic crests, forget it. This isn't surfer stuff. This is deep ocean swell. The kind that moves beneath you like the breath of the planet itself. Gentle, rolling, unseen unless you're paying real attention. The canoe rises, then falls, not fast, not sharp, just enough to make your stomach say, "Hey, we're still doing this?" The navigator crouches, closes his eyes, and does something kind of wild. He takes his hand and presses it to the side of the canoe, not the floor, the side, like he's listening with his fingers. Then he hums, one note, deep and low, timed with each rise and fall of the swell. He tells you, swell patterns are the fingerprints of the ocean. Each one is born from a wind far away, sometimes thousands of miles away. And they travel. They spread out across the sea like ripples from a giant sneeze. One set of swells might come from the east, born from storms near South America. Another set, smaller, might come from the south, pushed by Antarctic winds. And here's the trick. These sets cross and overlap, creating a complex rhythm, a kind of watery heartbeat. You sit still. The canoe rocks beneath you. And slowly, you begin to feel it. A pulse. Not just one, but two. A slow, wide roll from one direction, and a tighter, quicker bob from another. They cross each other, like invisible roads beneath your hull. Navigators, real ones, learn to read these patterns. With their eyes closed, with the stars gone, with the sky hidden by clouds, and the birds silent. They'd crouch low, press their fingers to the canoe, and feel the rhythm of swells colliding. From that, direction. Historians still argue whether some of these techniques were actually practical or just part of the navigator's oral lore. But when Western sailors finally tagged along, many were shocked to see it in action. One captain even wrote, "These men sail like they hear the ocean." And that wasn't far from the truth. Some navigators practiced on floating platforms, just sitting day after day, eyes closed, listening to the sea. Like monks, salty monks with great calves. They trained until they could name the direction of each swell and how long it had been traveling. The navigator stands and tells you, there is always a home swell. Always. You blink. A what? The swell that points back to where you came from. Your jaw drops a little. You look over your shoulder. The island you left is gone, swallowed by the curve of the ocean. Nothing behind you but blue. But sure enough, when you close your eyes, press your fingers to the canoe's edge, you feel it. That slower, deeper roll. It's subtle, like a hum at the edge of a song you barely remember, but it's there. And it always points home. You shiver, and not from the wind. Because this is no compass, no map. No app with a blinking blue dot. This is a conversation with the sea. And now you're finally starting to understand the language. The quirky part? Some navigators made stone charts to memorize swells. Not maps per se, but teaching tools. Little collections of bent sticks and stones strung together to represent how swell patterns intersected across the ocean. They didn't carry these with them. They memorized them, studied them, then trusted their bodies to remember what their eyes had learned. Back on the canoe, you're beginning to sense it. The sea has layers. Not just surface and depth, but moods, directions, stories. You shift your weight slightly, and the navigator nods, approving for once. Maybe you're getting the hang of this. Of course, just as you're starting to feel all proud and ocean-wise, a flying fish smacks you square in the chest. Yep, nature keeps you humble. It flops once, then launches itself back over the canoe's side, leaving you wet and blinking. The navigator just laughs. "First fish blessing," he says. You'll take it. Hours pass. The sun arcs overhead like it's showing off. The clouds puff lazily across the sky. The wind shifts just a little, and the swells respond, one growing stronger, the other softening. You keep your hand pressed to the canoe, feeling it all. And then you smell it again. Land. Not close, but closer than before. You can tell because it's mixed with something else now, humidity. The air feels thicker, heavier, as if the ocean's trying to hold its breath. The navigator doesn't say anything. He just adjusts the sail, shifts the canoe's angle by a hair, and sits back down, humming again. This time, you hum with him. Not because you know the tune, but because you're starting to understand the rhythm. The wind pulls at your hair now, not harshly, not yet, but with intent. Like it knows where you're going, even if you don't. It has weight to it, this breeze, pressing against your cheek like a hand that's trying to steer your head towards something important. You glance sideways. The navigator's eyes are closed again. He's not asleep, don't make that mistake, but he's somewhere else. You've started to realize that's how he works. When the body rests, the senses sharpen. And then he speaks. Not loudly, just a few words. Watch the sky. You look up. At first, it seems like nothing has changed. The same dome of endless blue. But slowly, if you look closely, you notice something. The clouds. They're not scattered randomly, not really. They gather. They drift in clusters, yes, but some hang lower, heavier, almost like they're tethered to something below. Island clouds, the navigator says, without opening his eyes. You squint. Those are different? He nods. Clouds over land rise slower. They trap moisture, especially in the heat. And sure enough, you start to see it. The way certain clouds pile up. Not tall and thunderous, but broad and lazy, like they've hit a ceiling. Some are tinged darker underneath, like soot. Others glow faintly gold at the edges, and all of them hover in one general direction. You follow their drift with your eyes and feel the tiniest jolt in your gut. That's landward. You know it. You don't see land yet, but everything inside you leans that way. Historians still argue whether Polynesians used cloud formations as an exact tool or just a general guide. But let's be honest, if you spent your life staring at the sky from the deck of a canoe, you'd start to notice patterns too, especially when survival depended on it. There's even a story from a 19th century French captain who trailed a Polynesian canoe across hundreds of miles. His logbook noted that the islanders would stare into the sky for hours, then change course without hesitation, often landing within mere hours of dry land. Coincidence? Doubt it. The quirky detail here: some navigators could identify individual islands just by the color of the clouds above them, like a signature. One island's clouds might be slightly more golden. Another's had a purple-blue hue at sunset. These weren't poetic embellishments, they were visual markers. You're learning this too now, whether you meant to or not. Your eye starts to tune in. You notice how the cumulus puffs flatten in the middle of the day, how they clump together near where you think land must be, how they cast faint reflections on the water, which ripple like oil-slick ghosts beneath you. And there's another sign too, light. Not just brightness, reflected light. The ocean glimmers differently when it's near land. There's a softness to it, a kind of shimmer that comes from shallow reefs, from sandy shores bouncing sunlight back into the sky. The navigator points. You follow his finger. It's not a cloud. It's not a bird. It's a smudge, a patch of brightness on the horizon that doesn't belong. You blink. It stays. He nods. Island water shines. You make a mental note of that. You're collecting clues like a detective with sea legs now. But the sky isn't done teaching you. As the afternoon wears on, the clouds begin to shift. A band of darker ones gathers off the port side. Your instincts twitch? Thunderstorm? But the navigator shakes his head. Just night sneaking in. Because night arrives differently out here. Not like a switch being flipped. More like a slow hush creeping over everything. The wind quiets, the swells stretch, even the birds get shy. And then the real magic happens. Stars. You'd seen stars before, of course, but not like this. Out here, where no streetlights interfere and no cities hum beneath the sky, they explode into view. Thousands, tens of thousands, whole galaxies. The Milky Way looks like spilled milk across black velvet. But the navigator doesn't look amazed. He looks busy. He lies back in the canoe, head cradled against a paddle, and raises his hand. He begins pointing to stars, muttering their names. Some you recognize, some you don't. Then he shifts slightly and points again. You sail under them, he says. Each one is a road. You furrow your brow. A road? Yes, star paths, like trails in the sky. And then you get it. These aren't just pretty lights. They're part of the map. Each star rises and sets at a specific angle, and navigators memorize the points where they meet the horizon. If you sail toward a setting star, you're traveling a particular heading. When that star disappears, you line up with another, and another. It's like cosmic hopscotch, except if you mess up, you don't just lose your turn, you might die. No pressure. Historians refer to this as sidereal navigation. Fancy term, simple concept. Using fixed stars to orient yourself at sea. Polynesians were masters of it. Some even memorized up to 150 individual star paths, enough to navigate vast triangular routes between Hawaii, Tahiti, and Aotearoa, New Zealand. Some skeptics used to believe this was impossible. But then, in the 1970s, a navigator named Maupia Lug blew everyone's minds by sailing from Micronesia to Hawaii with no instruments, just memory, just stars, just the old ways. Spoiler, he nailed it. The fringe detail? Some traditions talk about star whisperers, young apprentices chosen not for strength, but for their ability to sit motionless and memorize the movement of stars across the night sky. These kids would lie on their backs for hours, their elders slowly singing star names to them, pointing, repeating, correcting. A bedtime story turned survival skill. And now, here you are, doing the same. The navigator nudges you with his elbow. Your turn. You look up. He points to a bright star rising just off the eastern rim. You follow it with your eyes as it creeps upward. Follow that one, he says. It'll carry us home. You smile. You don't know its name. Not yet. But you will. The stars lean in closer tonight. Not literally, of course. You're not floating into space on some interstellar raft. But it feels like it. The sky's so full, so crisp, that the constellations seem to hover just a fingertip away. You lie back in the canoe, arms crossed behind your head, letting your gaze drift among the pinpricks of light as the canoe rocks gently beneath you. The navigator doesn't speak much now. He's in a mood. Not a bad one, just quiet, thoughtful, like he's having an ancient conversation with the cosmos that you're not quite fluent in yet. The sea is calmer tonight. The swells stretch longer, lazier, like they've grown sleepy too. And somewhere far off, the smell of land still teases your nose. Not strong, not sharp, but there. Familiar now, like the scent of someone's sweater. You're closing in. But you're not there yet. You adjust your position, the wood beneath you warm from the day, and the navigator finally speaks. His voice is low and even, like a lullaby woven from salt. Now you learn the birds. You blink? The birds? He nods toward the horizon. They know where to go, better than us. You sit up, squint into the fading light, and sure enough, there's a flicker of movement. Small wings, darting shapes. Not many, just a few. But they move with purpose, not random flutters. Direction. Seabirds, especially frigate birds and terns, have long been the secret navigational partners of voyaging cultures. These birds don't sleep on the water. They hunt during the day and return to land at night. Which means, if you see them flying low in the evening, they're headed home. Follow them and you're following a feathered compass. Historians still argue, the navigator says, whether we trained ourselves or the birds trained us. You snort softly. It's a nice idea. The birds as mentors, little flighty professors with a syllabus written in wind. There's a quirky tale some elders tell about a canoe that followed a single white tern for 3 days straight, only to land on a speck of island no one had charted in generations. They called it the island that sang to birds. You're not sure if that's poetic or ornithological nonsense. Doesn't matter. Out here, all the best truths sound like stories anyway. The stars shift. You try to follow. The bright one from before, your star path, drifts a little higher. You adjust the sail, following its silent instruction. The navigator watches you. He doesn't smile exactly, but there's approval in his stillness. Then he shows you something else. He opens a small pouch tucked beneath the canoe's central beam. Inside is a shell, a spiral one, pink at the tips. He holds it up, lets it catch the moonlight. This is taumako, he says. We use it to teach. You raise an eyebrow? Teach what? He turns the shell slowly, and you see it. Lines scratched faintly into the surface. Star paths, swell patterns, tiny notches marking angles. It's not a tool you'd use on a voyage. It's a study guide. Some navigators used shells, others wood, others just drew in sand. But they all shared the same idea. Navigation isn't memorizing a route. It's memorizing relationships between stars and wind, waves and birds, clouds and smell. And like a language, it's passed on mouth to mouth, hand to hand. You don't get to write this stuff down and walk away. You live it. The wind picks up slightly. Cool, salt sticky, the kind that turns your skin soft and your hair wild. Suddenly, the canoe shifts. Not from wind, from something below. You freeze. A gentle bump rocks the hull, then another. You lean over, peering into the dark water. There, just beneath the surface, movement. Smooth, wide, a shadow longer than the canoe. Shark? You whisper. The navigator chuckles. No, dolphin. You relax. A little. Polynesian voyagers often read the ocean not just by what it did, but by what it hosted. Creatures moving in certain patterns, fish schools darting one way, dolphins swimming near, were interpreted as signs. Dolphins, especially, were seen as protectors, harbingers of land. They travel in pods, and like the birds, they often orbit shorelines. For a few long minutes, they swim with you, just beneath the surface, gliding effortlessly, brushing the belly of the canoe. You swear you hear them click and chirp, like a watery Morse code only the sea can understand. You glance at the navigator. Do they always show up? He shrugs. when you need them. Cryptic, annoyingly comforting. The stars creep higher. You're getting better at tracking them now. One slips behind the sail, another kisses the horizon. And then, there it is. Land. Just the faintest silhouette, dark, still, like a lump of night that forgot to float away. You sit up straighter. Is that? He cuts you off with a nod. Tomorrow, he says, we arrive. But tonight, you sail a little longer. You lie back again, heart still thumping. You want to sleep, but your brain won't stop chewing on the last few hours. The clouds, the birds, the dolphins, the stars. How is this not magic? Even knowing the science behind it, the meteorology, the animal behavior, the astronomy, it still feels like something ancient and holy. Like the universe is whispering clues, and only the quietest, most patient people can hear them. You close your eyes, the canoe rocking like a cradle. Somewhere in the distance, a bird cries once. The scent of land grows stronger. You dream of stars rising like lanterns, of waves humming lullabies in languages you almost understand. You dream of finding your way without ever needing to be told where you're going. Your eyes flick open just as the sun begins to stretch. It peaks above the horizon slowly, cautiously, as if checking to see whether you're awake. The sky blushes in pinks and oranges, and the world slides into color again. Land is clearer now, not a dream, not a trick of light, but real, solid, sleeping beneath the gauze of morning mist. It's still a little ways off, but there's no doubt anymore. You sit up, joints cracking, back stiff, but there's a quiet thrill inside you, a vibration just beneath your ribs. The navigator is already awake. Of course he is. He's watching the shoreline, the set of his jaw somewhere between content and calculating, like he's checking off steps in a ritual older than memory. Now we taste, he says simply. You blink. Taste what? He dips a hand into the sea, brings it to his lips. You watch him. He swishes, spits, then looks at you. The water speaks. Okay, sure. At this point, you're not even surprised anymore. But still, you follow his lead. You dip your hand in, bring up a palm full of ocean, and let a drop touch your tongue. It's saltier than usual, thicker, like the ocean's been cooking up something nearby. The explanation? Freshwater rivers from islands seep into the surrounding sea. You'd think they'd get instantly diluted, but nope. For miles around, the water changes subtly. Its taste, its texture, its temperature. Polynesian navigators could recognize these micro-changes and use them as indicators. Historians still argue whether this was conscious science or learned intuition. Probably both. Either way, here's a fun fact. Some navigators claimed they could smell freshwater plumes. Not just taste, smell. Like a sommelier of the sea. And there's another trick. You splash a bit of the sea on the side of the canoe, let it dry. The salt crust it leaves, that pattern used to be examined by expert sailors for hints about nearby landmass. Fine grains meant deeper water. Crystalline clumps could mean you were nearing shore. Quirky? Sure. Possibly exaggerated? Maybe. But when you're days into a voyage with no GPS and no landmarks, you pay attention to every crystal, every shadow, every sneeze from the ocean. Now the air changes too. It grows denser, richer. You can actually feel the difference in your nose. There's a heaviness to it, a smell of plants and soil and fruit, like the jungle has unzipped itself a little and is breathing toward you. Some navigators described this sensation poetically. The land exhales. Kind of dramatic, but also not wrong. And then your ears catch it. The faintest drumming. No, not drums, not human. Waves. Breaking against shore. The canoe's still far enough out that you don't see the foam yet, but you hear it, like a soft clap, repeated in a rhythm too perfect to be random. It's muffled, shaped by reef and sand and shoreline angles, but unmistakable. This is another trick in the Polynesian Navigator's bag, sound mapping. Some islands are encircled by coral reefs, and the way waves break over them creates a sonic fingerprint. Experienced navigators could identify specific islands by the sound of their surf, especially at night or in fog. One navigator once said, "Each island sings a different lullaby." Kind of poetic, kind of perfect. The sun climbs higher. You begin to make out the contours of the island. Ridges like sleeping giants, green swells of trees, a necklace of reef glowing turquoise just beneath the water's surface. And birds, so many birds. Frigate birds whirl above you, dipping and diving, laughing that weird, wheezy laugh they have. White terns dart in tighter circles, some clutching tiny silver fish in their beaks, zooming back toward nests. They're headed in. So are you. The navigator gives a sharp nod. We arrive before the sun touches the shoulder. That's his way of saying midday. The sun will rise over the peak and then descend toward the western slope, its shoulder. Everything he says is like a poem. Nothing is just northwest at 285 degrees. It's follow the bright dog star until the wind breathes west and the sea tastes of stone. It's all sensed, and it's all somehow accurate. As you near the reef, the color of the water changes drastically. It lightens, from indigo to jade, then to the pale, almost glowing blue of a swimming pool. This tells you you're crossing over submerged coral shelves. The shallower the water, the more the sunlight bounces back. You adjust the sail. The wind shifts, almost on cue. And suddenly, boom, you feel it. The canoe lifts slightly. It's subtle, gentle, like riding over a pillow, but you feel it. You're on the swell of a breaking wave. You're crossing into the lagoon. That's when the navigator pulls out something from his woven pouch, a tiny piece of tapa cloth. He wets it with a splash of seawater and presses it to his lips. Then he flicks it over the side of the canoe. You give him a look. He shrugs. For the ancestors. Turns out, Polynesian navigators often made small offerings before landfall. A gesture of thanks to the ocean, to the stars, to the spirits who watched over the voyage. Some would whisper chants, others would just toss flowers or bits of coconut. Even hardcore survivalists have a soft side, apparently. You stare at the island now. Close enough to see trees swaying, leaves flickering silver. A beach of crushed coral sand stretches out, blinding under the rising sun. There's movement, too. Distant figures? People? Maybe? Or birds? Or ghosts? You're not sure. The air here is thick with memory. And just before your canoe touches the shallows, the navigator whispers, "Now we listen." To what? To everything. You hear the crackle of crabs on rocks, the distant thud of coconuts dropping, the faint rustle of wind threading its way through palm fronds. The island is awake, and you, traveler of stars and wave and cloud, have arrived. But the journey's not done. Because while the ocean taught you how to find land, now it's the land's turn to teach you how to remember. You step off the canoe, and it's like stepping into a dream. The sand gives beneath your feet, warm and soft, like flour sifted by time. You wiggle your toes in it, half expecting it to whisper secrets. The beach stretches wide, a crescent of pale gold, bordered by knotted roots and jungle beyond. You glance back once, just once, at the canoe, gently swaying in the shallows like it's catching its breath after the voyage. The navigator doesn't pause. He's already walking, bare feet silent on sand, as if he's done this 100 times, which, let's be honest, he probably has. You hurry to keep up, ducking under low-hanging branches and pushing past ferns that look like they've never been disturbed. The air here is different, sticky, earthy, full of green and growing things. You breathe in and think, this is what home might smell like to a tree. And then it hits you. This is the place you smelled days ago. That faint perfume carried on the wind, the mix of blossoms and mud and mango, that scent that told you land was near, You're now walking inside it. You smile. The navigator leads you inland to a clearing ringed with giant breadfruit trees and towering bamboo. There's a thatch-roofed shelter low to the ground and carved stumps to sit on. You collapse onto one, legs heavy. Your body aches, but your mind is wide awake. He sits across from you and begins to speak, not just to you, but to the space itself. He tells stories. Stories of voyages past, of canoes that vanished into fog and returned years later with different names, of a navigator who dreamed of an island and then found it, of a dolphin that led a canoe through a storm, of a woman who could taste the wind and name the birds in her sleep. You listen, spellbound. This is what comes after the journey, the telling, and not just for entertainment. In Polynesian culture, oral history is the map, the compass, the library. Everything must be remembered. Everything must be spoken. Because if you don't say it, it vanishes. Historians still argue, he says at one point, how much of our knowledge was myth, and how much myth was simply misunderstood memory. You nod. Makes sense. After all, the difference between a fact and a legend is often just a generation or two of retelling. He reaches into a woven satchel and pulls out a smooth, flat piece of driftwood. On it, there are carvings, grooves and notches, intersecting lines and tiny dots. This, he explains, is a stick chart. You lean closer. It's not a map in any Western sense. There are no labeled landmasses, no coordinates. Instead, the sticks represent swell patterns. The shells, land. The curves show how waves bend around islands. It's less of a map and more of a song in solid form, a way to remember how the ocean behaves. Navigators used these charts to study, not to take on voyages. They memorized them, internalized them, and then left them behind when they sailed. You didn't need to carry the chart, you carried the memory. You run your fingers over the grooves. The wood is smooth, worn by hands long gone. And just for a second, you feel like you can hear it. The hum of waves, the whisper of wind, the crackle of stars shifting positions in the night. You look up.
"You're ready," he says quietly. "Ready for what?" Before you can ask, he stands, walks to the edge of the clearing, points toward a narrow path winding deeper into the trees. And without a word, he disappears down it. Well, okay then. You follow, obviously. The trail is narrow, winding through a jungle that hums with invisible life. Birds call from hidden perches. Leaves rustle above you like gossiping neighbors. The sun slices through the canopy in golden shafts, lighting patches of moss and the occasional brilliant orchid. And then you hear it. Water. A stream. No, a spring. You push past a curtain of vines, and there it is, a pool of clear water fed by a gentle trickle from a mossy rock wall. Sunlight dances across the surface. The air here is cooler, and the smell, earthy, mineral, ancient, is the same smell you tasted out at sea. This is the source. The navigator crouches beside it, cups the water in his hand, and drinks. You do the same. It's sweet, cold, alive. He smiles. This is what you smelled from miles away. You look at him, baffled. This tiny spring? He nods. All things are connected. The sea, the air, the land. You smell this because it speaks through the wind. You sit beside the pool, suddenly overwhelmed. All this time, all this sailing, the stars and birds and salt and clouds, it all led to this. A spring no bigger than a bathtub, quiet, unassuming. And yet, this tiny thing had called to you from the open ocean. You're not sure what to say. So, you don't say anything. You just sit. And in the silence, you realize something strange. You know how to get back. Not in a take the second reef left and keep paddling for 6 hours way, but in your body. You've been taught to feel your way now. You know the smell of this island, the taste of this spring, the color of the water as you approach, the songs of its birds, the sound of its surf. It's all in you now. You could close your eyes, push off from shore, and the ocean would welcome you. Because you're not lost. You never were.
You wake up beneath a breadfruit tree, belly full of roasted taro, back stiff from sleeping on woven mats, and your first thought is, how long have I been here? You sit up slowly, blinking into the morning light. The navigator is nowhere in sight, just birdsong and the faint rustle of wind. The island hums quietly around you, like it's waiting. You stretch, walk toward the shore again. The tide has pulled back overnight, revealing new details. Sea cucumbers lazing in tide pools, ridges of shells scattered like confetti, and footprints, yours and his, from yesterday. But something's changed. Now it's your turn. The navigator had left no instructions, no final speech, no slow clap graduation moment. Just that quiet look at the spring and the simple words, "You're ready." And somehow you knew what it meant. You're going back, but not to where you started. You're sailing elsewhere now, finding your own island, just like he once found this one. You ready the canoe, check the lashings, test the balance. It's strange how your hands know what to do now, as if they've learned by osmosis, or maybe just by sheer sleepy repetition. The navigator reappears just before you shove off. He holds out something small, an unshaped block of wood. A reminder, he says. You nod, tuck it in your satchel, and with that, you push off. This time, there's no anxiety, no doubt clawing at your ribs, no whisper of panic when the island starts shrinking behind you. Just the soft, sure rhythm of the paddle, the flutter of the sail, and the wide, open sea. You watch the birds again. They spiral and wheel, heading inland, but a few drift out toward the open water. You follow their arc. As you move, you remember the way the swell felt when you approached land, the shallowness, the softness. You feel that difference now, even from a distance. There's none of that here. Just the deep, open pulse of the big ocean, and it's thrilling. You tilt your face to the sun, eyes squinting. The navigator taught you this trick too. Use your own body like a compass. The warmth of the sun on your left shoulder in the morning, that means you're heading south. At midday, it should touch your scalp. Afternoon, your right cheek. You adjust slightly, just enough. The wind hums differently now. It's behind you, not against. That means the easterlies have returned, those trade winds that Polynesian voyagers once depended on, reliable as a stubborn ant. You sail, and you wait, and you think. Because here's the strange truth. Navigating isn't just about finding places. It's also about becoming the kind of person who can. Historians still argue how much of ancient wayfinding was taught, systematically, logically, and how much was absorbed, passed down in stories and songs. The answer, as usual, is probably both. But some navigators claimed the ocean spoke to them, even in silence. Did they mean this literally? Hard to say. But after days of floating, sleeping, and waking on the waves, you start to get it. There's a language out here. Not one of words, but of patterns. The way a wave lifts and drops. The shimmer on the horizon that isn't quite a cloud. The smell that shifts from salt to fern. The gull that lands just a little too far from shore. Even the moon helps. Tonight it's a lazy crescent, smiling sideways. A known companion. One you used to ignore, but now watch like an old friend. You hum to yourself. Another trick of the navigators. They sang. Not for fun, well, okay, a little for fun, but also as a tool. Chants and songs help them remember star paths, wave directions, seasonal winds. A 5-minute tune might carry an entire map inside its melody. Like an audiobook, but more poetic and with fewer aggressive pop-up ads. So you sing, quietly. You don't know the words, exactly, but that's okay. You remember the rhythm,
the swell of vowels, the way the melody mirrored the motion of the sea. And then, like before, something shifts. The air thickens. The wind carries smell again, fresh, green, tinged with the bite of volcanic rock and the sweetness of fruit. You grin. You can't see it yet, but you know, land is near. This time, there's no surprise, just quiet satisfaction. You run your fingers along the canoe's edge. The salt crusts differently here. The sound of the surf begins to tickle your ears, muffled at first, but present. You sit forward, scan the horizon, and yes, there. A bump on the edge of the world. An island. Not marked on any map you've seen, but unmistakably real. You press your fingers together and whisper thanks, not just to the gods or ancestors or stars, but to the ocean itself, and to the navigator. You remember what he said at the spring. All things are connected. That block of wood in your satchel? You pull it out now. And in it, you see not just a reminder, but a challenge, a blank chart, a future island you'll help someone else find someday. Because here's the quiet truth no one tells you. The journey never really ends. The island is just one moment. The rest, that's still ahead.
You don't set foot on the new island right away. Instead, you circle it, once, maybe twice, slowly, like you're learning its name just by looking at it. This is what the old navigators did, you remember? They didn't crash into land like overeager tourists. They studied it first, observed the reefs, the swell patterns, the gaps in the surf. Because every island has moods and secrets. You want to meet this one politely. The island rises dark and green, with ridges like folded fabric and cliffs that spill down into frothy breakers. Mist hangs in pockets between the peaks, like breath held in the trees. You catch the scent again, that mingling of wet stone, orchid, and something sharp and peppery. It reminds you of the navigator's spring, but more wild, less tame. You watch the seabirds too. Some dive, some glide, and some just float like grumpy marshmallows. But it's their patterns that matter. They spiral higher as you near one edge of the island, signaling thermals. That means cliffs, possibly caves, possibly nesting colonies, possibly the kind of place where ancient voyagers might have stashed things, ritual stones, carvings, stories. You land on the opposite side. A gentler slope, black sand, shards of white coral scattered like puzzle pieces. You step ashore. It feels different this time. You're not the lost one anymore. You're the finder. The island doesn't intimidate you. It intrigues you. You hike slowly inland, brush crunching underfoot. The air is cooler here, shaded by massive trees, with roots that look like they've been dancing for a century. You pause at a patch of moss that glows faintly green and squeeze it between your fingers. Spongy, damp, full of life. And then, footprints, not yours. Someone's been here. Your heart skips. You crouch beside them, half expecting to see them fade like a mirage, but they're real. Wide, barefoot tracks, recent too, edges still crisp. You follow. The path leads uphill, winding between lava rock and thorny brush. The island whispers around you, not words exactly, but you swear you catch the rhythm of old songs, maybe from the wind, maybe from your own overactive brain. The prints stop at a clearing, and there they are. 3 people, old, young, middle-aged, sitting in a circle around a low fire. They look up, not surprised, just expectant, like they were waiting for you, which is either incredibly spooky or incredibly flattering. You nod. They nod back. No one speaks at first, but they make space. You sit. A woman with hair down to her waist leans forward and offers you a slice of roasted banana wrapped in a leaf. You take it, bow slightly, and bite. It tastes like trust. After a while, the middle-aged one, a man with weathered hands and eyes like storm clouds, starts to speak. Not in your language, not exactly, but the words slip into your mind anyway, like rain into soil. He tells you the name of this island. It's unrecorded, unsung, a secret place once known only to their ancestors. But they've been waiting for someone to find it again. You blink. That someone, apparently, is you. And just as you're beginning to spiral, me? Are you sure? I barely know how to lash a canoe without it eating me alive. The woman cuts in with a chuckle. She says the island chose you, not the other way around. You breathe. There's something comforting about that, because if the island picked you, maybe you're not responsible for being perfect, just present. They ask how you found it. You tell them about the stars, the birds, the scents on the wind, about the spring, the chant, the wave that felt different beneath your boat. The youngest of the three, a boy with a woven pendant and feet that never stop twitching, claps softly. He says his grandmother used to talk about that, how real navigators didn't just see, they felt. Historians still argue, he adds with a grin, whether that was intuition, ancestral memory, or just really good pattern recognition. You grin back. The boy's grandmother, it turns out, was a navigator too. Her canoe was smaller, her journeys shorter, but her memory was sharp, and she taught him some chants. He offers to teach you one. You nod, of course. And so, right there in the clearing, as the fire crackles and the wind toys with the leaves, you learn a song. It's about a fish. A very annoying fish that keeps leading canoes off course, until one navigator learns to listen instead of chase. The rhythm is catchy, you hum along. And somewhere between the second and third verse, you realize something wild. You know this story, or maybe a version of it. The details are different, the fish has a new name. The island is shaped like a turtle instead of a hand. But the lesson, the feeling, the way the navigator finally lets go of control and follows the rhythm of the sea, that part you remember, because it's the same everywhere. These aren't just stories, they're memory software. They cross oceans, they evolve, but they carry the same kernel of truth, the same navigational DNA. And every time you hear one, every time you sing one, you become part of that transmission. You're no longer just learning the history, you are the history. You spend 3 days with the trio. They show you their water source, a tiny spring bubbling through lava rock, half hidden behind moss and a stubborn coconut tree. You taste it. It's different, spicy, almost smoky, and somehow familiar. Like the ocean carried a whisper of it to your canoe, and that whisper pulled you in. You start mapping the island, not on paper, but in your memory. The place where the sun first touches the hill at dawn. The dip in the western cliff where wind always whistles. The grove where red flowers bloom at night. You watch the sky, too. Stars you've seen before now rise at slightly different angles. You adjust your mental chart. Realize how much precision was needed for ancient navigators to travel hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles using nothing but these shifting lights. No GPS, no compasses, just bone-deep, soul-wide knowledge. You find yourself lying awake at night, staring upward, whispering star names. Some you remember, some you improvise. You wonder if the stars mind. Probably not. They've been listening to sailors mumble for millennia.
You're not sure when the island starts to feel like home. Maybe it's the way the wind through the trees begins to sound like your name. Maybe it's how your feet automatically avoid the slippery roots on the trail to the spring. Or maybe it's the way you catch yourself humming the fish song while gathering kindling like you've always known it. The trio doesn't treat you like a guest anymore. They nudge you awake at sunrise to help prepare the taro. They ask you to patch leaks in the canoe, with care, not speed, the boy warns, tossing you a dried gourd full of tree sap. You work, hands sticky, listening to them argue about whether the ancestors could sail at night or only during the day. Historians still argue, the woman says, pointing her knife at the fire, but the stars don't wait for sunlight, so why should we? She gets a slow nod from the man. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, it's like lava breaking the crust. Measured, powerful, and just a little bit intimidating. He tells you about the last time someone found this island, his great-grandfather, who followed the scent of a particular flower that only blooms when land is near. No one remembers the flower's name anymore, but the story remains. And that's the thing about stories here. They're not decorations. They're maps, manuals, anchors. You realize that every tale, no matter how bizarre or funny or haunting, holds a piece of the navigational puzzle. Even the one about the canoe that turned into a shark and refused to carry lyres. Especially that one. The boy laughs when you retell it, adding a twist you hadn't heard. The shark canoe eventually returned to land, but only if the traveler admitted what they'd lied about. You can't help wondering what lie you'd have to confess to make it home. By now, you've memorized the coastline, the craggy northern edge where the waves boom like drums, the whispering sands to the west where crabs dig holes like tiny architects, and the shallow cove to the east where fish practically leap into your arms if you hum the right tune. You try the tune one morning, just to test it. No leaping fish, but a very bold octopus gives you a look. You take that as progress. You've built a shelter, too. Not because anyone asked you to, but because it felt like time. It's small, just wide enough to lie down in without kicking the wall, but sturdy. You wove the roof from palm fronds, tied the corners with twisted bark, and even fashioned a kind of latch from coral and driftwood. It creaks satisfyingly when you open it. The woman visits, nods once, and says, "It won't kill you. Good job." You take that as high praise. One night, a storm rolls in without warning. You hear it before you see it, wind hissing through the trees, the sea growling low and dangerous. You run to the canoe, check the lashings again. The others do the same. No panic, just swift, practiced movements. The man anchors the vessel with a heavy stone. The boy ties knots faster than should be physically possible. The woman lights a smoky fire to keep the worst of the wind away from the food store. And you? You brace the shelter. You press your palm to the earth, feeling the vibrations. You listen, remembering what the navigator once said. The island breathes, even when the sky screams. The storm crashes overhead, but your little hut holds. In the morning, the island glistens. The trees drip slowly. The surf hisses softly against the sand. The world smells clean, renewed. And there, at the edge of the clearing, the boy is already drawing something in the dirt. You walk over. It's a star chart, or something close to it.
He explains, "This is the pattern you'd follow if you wanted to return to the island with the spring." He doesn't call it a map. He calls it a memory song drawn in mud. You study it and realize you could do it. You could sail back. You wouldn't even need the navigator. But you also don't feel like leaving. Not yet. You sit with the boy, tracing the stars with your finger. He asks if the stars felt different where you came from. You tell him they did, but only because you hadn't looked closely. Later, the man shows you a hollowed-out shell. Inside, tiny carved figures, boats, fish, a round thing that might be the moon or might be a coconut. It's a story box, he says, for travelers, a reminder that every journey carries more than cargo. He asks if you'd like to make your own. You say yes. It takes hours. You carve slowly, trying not to stab yourself with the dull blade. You make a little canoe, a wave, a spiral like the spring, and, after some hesitation, a nose. A big one. You grin. The woman sees it, cackles, and says, "So you do remember the first thing you smelled." You finish just before dusk. The fire is crackling. The air hums with that particular sleepy rhythm the island seems to slip into after dark. You place your story box beside the others, and you feel, not finished exactly, but rooted. You're no longer drifting. The next morning, they walk you to the canoe. No fanfare, no ceremony, just fruit tucked into your bag and a nod from the man. The woman squeezes your shoulder. The boy hands you a piece of cloth, dyed with crushed leaves, printed with a spiral and 3 tiny birds. "For your next sail," he says. You push off again. And now the sea feels different. Not foreign, not threatening, just wide.
Like a deep breath you're finally ready to take. You don't rush. You let the canoe drift for a while. Let the ocean choose the rhythm. The birds wheel above you. The scent, barely there now, fades into salt and sky. You reach into your satchel and pull out the story box. Run your fingers over the carvings. You hum. Not a full chant, not yet, but a beginning. Because the sea isn't silent, and you're learning to listen.
You're far from shore now. The island's silhouette has vanished behind the haze, like a memory slipping under a wave. Ahead, nothing but horizon. Blue, immense, untouchable. You squint against the light bouncing off the water, adjust the angle of your sail, and feel the canoe sigh beneath you. It's content, almost smug. You get the sense it enjoys the open ocean more than land. The sea today is calmer, but not lazy. It ripples and rolls in long, steady breaths. You settle in, letting your body move with it, not against. Like the elders taught you. You hum quietly. Not a chant exactly, just a thread of sound to anchor your mind. You find yourself tapping the rhythm of the waves with your fingers, counting swells the way the old navigators did. 5, 7, 11, then reset. Not because the numbers matter, but because the counting keeps you awake. And awake matters out here. You spot a bird. A lone frigate, wings outstretched like blades. It slices the sky with lazy grace, riding thermals you can't see, but now suspect you can feel, faintly. You shift your weight, watching it veer, then loop back. Birds don't just fly around for fun out here. They follow patterns, hunt along reefs, and sometimes, just sometimes, scout land. So you follow the frigate. It's not much of a decision. You just lean that way. Let the sail catch a bit more wind. The canoe understands before you do, nose tilting gently eastward. Midday heat presses down like a warm, wet towel. Your shirt sticks to your back. Salt crusts your lips. You lick them absently and dream of the spring. The spicy, cool water. You can almost taste it again. That's when the scent hits you. Not strong, not like before, but unmistakable. Earthy, plant sweet, just a ghost of land on the wind. And you know, something's out there. The frigate dives. You rise to your knees, scanning. Nothing visible yet, but your skin tingles. That sixth sense the navigators whispered about, half magic, half hyper-awareness. You remember the trio's voices, that fish song. You hum it again. Still no leaping fish, but the water around the canoe shifts in texture, smoother somehow, glassy. The sea doesn't speak in words, but right now, it's practically yelling. Pay attention. You do. Time slows. You notice everything. The pitch of the wind, the whisper of the sail, the flutter of a crab that somehow ended up in your storage basket. You gently return it to the ocean. It flips you off with a claw before sinking out of view. On the horizon, finally, a smudge. Low, bluish green, easily mistaken for a cloud. But your gut says island. You press your hand to the side of the canoe, letting it feel your excitement. It tilts in agreement. You adjust the sail again, barely. No rush. You know the dance now. Let the island come to you. As you drift closer, the air shifts. More scents. A bloom of flowers you can't name. Something spicy like ginger. A faint scent of smoke. Someone might be cooking. You squint. No signs of huts. No movement. Just lush trees and shoreline. But still, smoke means people. Or at least recent people. You wonder if this is another hidden island like the last one. A kind of whisper place, half real, half legend. Maybe this one's been forgotten entirely. Maybe it remembers too much. The sun dips lower. Shadows stretch across the waves. You steer toward the calmer side of the island, where a gentle cove offers soft sand and a few scattered rocks like seats at a beachside campfire. You land. Stretch your legs. Feel your knees pop like angry popcorn kernels. You whisper a thank you to the canoe and step onto the sand. The air here smells rich, like compost and sun-warmed stone. You find a trail without looking for one, just a gap in the trees that feels intentional. You follow. It winds upward through dense undergrowth, birds chirping suspiciously above. You get the sense they're judging you. One squawks what sounds like a laugh. You consider responding, but decide against picking a fight with tropical wildlife today. Halfway up the hill, you find it. A platform, old, weathered, built from stone and covered in moss. It doesn't look like a house, more like a place for gathering or remembering. There are carvings too. Not words, symbols, spirals, fish hooks, stars arranged like constellations. You brush your fingers over them, half expecting the stone to hum. It doesn't, but something hums inside you. And then, singing. Faint, not close. You freeze. Not from fear, just awe. Someone else is here. You follow the sound, slowly, quietly. It leads you downhill again, toward a smaller clearing. And there, standing beside a twisted banyan tree, is a girl. Maybe 16, maybe 100. Hard to tell with that kind of presence. She's singing softly to a bundle of sticks she's arranging. A chant, clearly. About fire, perhaps? Or boats? Or both. She stops when she sees you. Doesn't smile, doesn't frown, just studies you like a question she's heard before but hasn't answered yet. Then she nods. That's it. You sit cross-legged a few paces away. She keeps working. You watch. Finally, she speaks. Looking for something? You think about it, then say, no, just listening. She grins. Good answer. Turns out she's the apprentice of someone called the Echo Woman, a legendary teacher, half myth, who supposedly teaches navigators how to listen to memory, the kind of memory that lives in rocks and wind and forgotten smells. Historians still argue, the girl says, if she ever existed, but she taught me how to braid coconut rope without thinking. So, you sit together for hours. She teaches you a small chant for protection. You offer her the spiral cloth the boy gave you. She accepts it without ceremony, just tucks it into her satchel and nods again. You feel like you've passed a test. That night, you sleep under the banyan tree. No dreams, just silence. And when you wake, the girl is gone. Only the chant remains, still echoing faintly in your head. You whisper it once, twice, and somehow it feels like you've known it forever. You stay on the island for 3 days, or maybe 4. It's hard to tell. Time here feels like wet sand, slipping through your fingers before you realize it's even moved. You keep close to the platform, exploring the forest paths that spiral around it like a spider web. You find a pool shaped like a teardrop, lined with smooth black stones, warm to the touch. The water there smells faintly metallic, like it remembers lava. You never see the girl again. But her presence lingers, like the low hum of a conch shell. You find little signs she was real. A fresh set of footprints in the clay. A braid of red string tied around a tree root. A pile of perfectly split firewood near your canoe. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make you wonder whether she was a person or a guide sent by the island itself. It's here, amid the quiet, that you begin piecing it all together. Not with logic, not with a map, but with instinct. You lie back on the mossy stone of the platform, letting the sun warm your chest, and let the memories drift up. The navigator's hand tracing the wind, the boy's fingers in the dirt, the storybox carvings, the girl's chant. They all link, not in a straight line, but in a spiral, a loop. And suddenly it hits you. This isn't a route, it's a rhythm. The ancient navigators weren't memorizing stops like a cruise itinerary. They were learning songs, smells, shapes, temperatures, the feeling of travel, the smell of storm-churned air, the silence before an island reveals itself, the way waves grow hesitant before brushing a reef. You sit up fast, heart thudding. You're not supposed to find your way with your eyes. You're supposed to remember with your body. That's what the old ones meant. You whisper the chant again. This time, something in the forest stirs. A bird calls, a branch drops, a breeze lifts a curtain of leaves. You don't stay to analyze it. You just pack up, eat one last mango, and head for the canoe. As you push off, a familiar voice echoes, not out loud, but inside you. Now, says the navigator's voice, gentle and dry, let's see if you can find your way without me. You take a long breath. It smells like salt and orchids and something else, distant but familiar, land. You start paddling, but not in a straight line. You move with the current, pausing now and then to let your nose do the steering. It's absurd, right? Trusting your nose to navigate the ocean? And yet, you pick up faint traces on the wind, damp soil, crushed ferns, even something that smells suspiciously like grilled bananas. You laugh out loud. Your canoe bobs in agreement. Days pass, maybe more. You lose count.
You sing to the sea, talk to the canoe, dream of islands that float through the sky like jellyfish. You even invent a joke about a navigator and a crab getting lost together, but forget the punchline. Doesn't matter, you'll remember when you need it. One morning, the clouds part, and there it is. An island. Not the one with the spring, not the girls' island, a new one. Broad and low and green, like a mossy thumbprint pressed into the sea. You don't cheer, you just nod. Like the canoe, like the wind. Because now you get it. This is what it means to become a navigator. It's not about charts or compasses. It's about transforming your entire self into a vessel of memory. You don't just follow the route, you embody it. Your skin remembers the heat of one island's soil. Your toes recall the squelch of another shore. Your lungs know the exact weight of pre-rain air. You are not carrying a map, you are the map. You beach your canoe gently, hopping into the shallows. A group of people greets you at the edge of the trees. No fear, just curiosity. One of them offers a piece of roasted fish, still steaming. You sit. They don't ask where you're from. They ask what you've heard on the wind. So you tell them everything. The navigator, the scent trails, the story box, the storm, the spiral cloth, the echo girl, even the insulted crab. They laugh, nod, add their own tales. Someone brings a drum. Someone else starts singing. And just like that, you're folded into another island's rhythm. You stay for a week this time, long enough to learn a new chant, taste a spiky fruit that makes your mouth buzz, and get mildly chased by a goat with suspiciously intelligent eyes. You try to name it, it ignores you. Historians still argue whether Polynesian navigators used scent deliberately, or if the stories of smelling land from miles away were just poetic exaggerations. Some dismiss it entirely, saying the nose is too unreliable. But you know better. Because after all this time, after 3 islands, a dozen chants, and at least one prophetic crab, you've done it. You've followed the scent of land, not once, not twice, but again and again. You are the myth now, and that might be the most boringly amazing thing you've ever become. One morning, as the sea smooths like silk and the birds circle low, you realize it's time to go home. Wherever that is now. You don't pack much. A few dried bananas, a carved token someone pressed into your hand with a wink, and a half-finished chant you haven't quite mastered. The rest you leave behind, offerings to the island and proof you were there. A coil of rope, still warm from the sun. A sandal whose twin vanished into the surf 3 days ago. A smooth, flat stone shaped like a heart that you tuck under a banyan root. Goodbyes are silent. You nod to the elders who shared stories by firelight, to the child who taught you how to fish with a spiderweb-like net, to the goat who still isn't making eye contact. You push the canoe into the water with care, feeling its familiar weight in your palms, like greeting an old friend. The sail catches, and you're off again. But something's shifted this time. You're not drifting aimlessly. You're following something. A pull behind your belly button, a hum in your ribs. The path isn't visible, but it's there, like a thread tugging gently through the sea. Not just a direction, an intention. You pass through a field of flying fish, dozens of silver arcs skipping like stones across the surface. You pause to watch. They're not fleeing, just showing off. You clap once in appreciation. One does a loop mid-air, like it heard you. The scent of land fades now. Out here, it's all salt and sky. You inhale deeply, trying to store that smell. Ocean clean, with hints of plankton and the dry crackle of sun-bleached wood. It's not exciting, it's not rich, it's not even especially pleasant. But it's honest. You nap in the middle of the day, head tucked under a basket to block the sun. You dream of islands whispering to each other beneath the waves. When you wake, the wind has shifted slightly. You adjust the sail with sleepy fingers, letting it guide you wherever it thinks you need to be. You spot flotsam, driftwood bound with old rope. Another sign. Each time, the sea leaves you a breadcrumb, a worn paddle bobbing alone, a carved turtle floating serenely, a feather, white with a black tip, twisting through the air until it lands softly beside you. You laugh despite yourself. If this were a movie, you'd roll your eyes. But this is the boring history of how your ancestors crossed oceans without GPS. So poetic signs and drifting turtle tokens are just another Tuesday. The air changes. Not dramatically, just a subtle warmth. A faint humidity that makes your skin feel sticky sweet. Your tongue tastes green again. You're close. And then you smell it. Dirt. Not the poetic scent of fertile earth, no. This is actual dirt. Muddy, wet, stepped on by bare feet kind of dirt. The kind that clings to ankles and gets under fingernails. And that's how you know you're almost home. Or maybe not home, but a place that welcomes you like one. Ahead, a stretch of trees so dense they look stitched together. A shoreline dotted with black stones shaped like sleeping animals. A fire burns inland, slow and steady.
You beach your canoe for the final time. It doesn't complain, just settles in the sand with a small sigh, as if it's been holding its breath this whole time. You rest your palm on its side. "Thanks," you whisper. It hums back. You don't know who lives here, but the first face you see is familiar. It's the navigator, still leaning on that crooked paddle, still grinning like he knew you'd get here eventually. He lifts an eyebrow like, "Took you long enough." You shrug. "Had to learn how to smell land first." He nods and gestures you forward. This place is quieter than the others. Not empty, just content. You smell taro roasting, hear someone pounding cloth. A low chant echoes from somewhere uphill, slow and deep. It's here you'll stay. For now. Because even explorers need a place to rest, to store stories like folded maps, to tell others, hey, if you sail past the fire-breathing fish and follow the scent of mangoes, you'll find a girl who sings to sticks and a goat that owes me a rematch. You help mend sails, you cook fish, you hum that half-finished chant until it decides to finish itself. Some nights you sit by the shore, watching, waiting, because you know someone will come, just like you did, sunburned, curious, desperate to understand how someone could smell an island from the middle of nowhere and believe it was real. You'll nod to them and say, "Come on, I've got a story." And that's how it goes. The boring history of Polynesian navigation, where nothing explodes, no one conquers anything, and the climax is a guy sitting in a canoe going, smells like ginger. But honestly, you've never felt more amazed, more human, more awake. And now,
Now it's time to rest, to let the ocean's rhythm fade, to let the island's breath slow, to drift, to dream, to remember. Wind down 300 words. The fire's burning lower now, soft and amber, casting shadows that flicker like memories across the sand. The breeze hums gently, weaving through the leaves, brushing across your face like the hand of a story well told. You lie back near the canoe, its wooden ribs creaking as if exhaling after a long, quiet voyage. Overhead, the stars begin to gather, slowly, silently, like watchful elders settling in to keep you safe. The scent of the sea fades now, replaced by the clean, dark smell of night. You hear the hush of waves meeting shore, again and again, like a lullaby you already know the words to. Everything slows, even your thoughts, even time. You remember the navigator's voice, half teasing, half kind. You remember the island girl's chant. You remember the smell of flowers on wind that hadn't touched land in weeks. All of it folding gently into your memory, not as stories, but as sensations, as parts of you now. The fire pops softly. A bird settles in a nearby tree. And the last thing you feel is peace. Not the dramatic Hollywood kind, but the boring, beautiful kind that comes after long travel, after finding yourself not where you expected, but exactly where you needed to be. So rest now. Let the island hold you. Let the sea forgive your questions. Let the stars steer your dreams. And if you wake with the scent of orchids in your hair or the rhythm of waves still in your bones, don't worry. You're just remembering, the way all good navigators do.